A revolution that shook one of the most powerful imperial forces in the world.
A rebellion that made the British realize for the first time that India was not just a colony.
Indeed.
But the most interesting thing is, even today historians do not fully agree on what the 1857 event truly was.
Was it merely a revolt by a few angry soldiers? No, it's spreading. This is bigger.
Or was it the first great battle for India's freedom?
On one hand, the British call it the Sepoy Mutiny. On the other, Indian history calls it the First War of Independence. But what is the truth? And what exactly happened that united thousands of soldiers, kings, farmers, and common people against British rule? Today, we will uncover the complete story of the 1857 uprising.
A story that changed the future of both India and Britain.
To understand the revolution of 1857, we must go back a little, approximately 100 years.
The year 1757, the Battle of Plassey. This was the event after which the East India Company began to rapidly expand its influence in India.
Then came the Battle of Buxar in 1764, and thereafter, the company ceased to be merely a trading entity. It gradually evolved into the ruler of India.
In the following decades, the British gradually tightened their control over Indian states one by one. Sometimes through war, sometimes through treaties, and sometimes through political manipulation.
But the most significant change occurred in 1848, when Lord Dalhousie became the Governor-General of India. Dalhousie had a policy, the doctrine of lapse.
According to this policy, if an Indian ruler had no biological heir, his kingdom would automatically be annexed by the British.
It may sound like an administrative rule, but for Indian rulers, it was a direct attack on their very existence.
Satara, Jhansi, Nagpur, and many other prince states were annexed into the British Empire under this very policy.
Rani Lakshmibai of Jhansi opposed this. However, the British did not heed her words, and it was precisely here that a new spark of discontent was ignited.
But it wasn't just the kings who were angry. Farmers were suffering too.
The British tax system had placed immense pressure on the rural economy. In many regions, farmers were even losing their land.
Traditional industries were collapsing. Raw materials were being shipped to Britain, and finished goods were being sold back in India.
This deeply affected local artisans and traders. Thousands began losing their livelihoods.
But no one had any idea that the biggest explosion was yet to come. And that explosion was going to come from within the army. For the Indian soldiers serving in the British Army were also gradually becoming discontented. Their pay was low, and opportunities for promotion were limited.
And according to Bal Gangadhar Tilak, the behavior of British officials was so humiliating that no civilized society could have tolerated it.
Indian soldiers began to feel that they were fighting only for the British Empire, but receiving no respect in return. And then came that controversy which turned the entire atmosphere into a powder keg. The Enfield rifle.
The new Enfield rifle was introduced in the Indian Army during 1856 and 1857. The end of the cartridge for this rifle had to be bitten off with one's teeth.
Soon a rumor spread that these cartridges were greased with cow and pig fat. For Hindu soldiers, the cow was sacred. For Muslim soldiers, the pig was forbidden.
So the news spread like lightning. British officials tried to provide clarification, but it was too late. Trust had been broken.
And when people lose trust in a regime, even small incidents can trigger massive explosions.
But no one had any idea that just a few weeks later, a soldier's name was destined to be etched in history. That soldier's name was Mangal Pandey. But no one had any inkling of what was about to happen.
March 29, 1857, Barrackpore Cantonment.
An Indian soldier whose name was Mangal Pandey. On that day, he took the step that transformed the whole of India in the months to follow.
Mangal Pandey took up arms against his British officers. He openly called for rebellion.
However, at that time, his attempt did not turn into a widespread rebellion. He was arrested and hanged on April 8, 1857.
But the British did not realize they were not just executing a soldier.
They were giving birth to an idea. An idea which was to spread like wildfire across North India within a few weeks.
And then came the 9th of May, 1857. Meerut. 85 Indian soldiers allegedly refused to use the greased cartridges. British officials handed down a harsh sentence. They were publicly humiliated, handcuffed, and thrown into prison.
Thousands of Indian soldiers witnessed this scene. Anger was already simmering, it needed only a spark. And that spark ignited the very next day.
May 10, 1857, the rebellion began in Meerut. Indian soldiers broke open the jail and freed their imprisoned comrades. Several British officers were attacked.
And then, the rebels took a decision, one that was to determine the course of the entire revolution. They began their march towards Delhi.
This was not merely a military move. It was a political message, because Delhi was still considered the symbolic capital of the Mughal Empire.
May 11, 1857, the rebels reached Delhi, and from this point, the situation changed abruptly. The British administration in Delhi was virtually shaken. The rebels headed towards the Red Fort.
And then, they sought support from an elderly ruler. That ruler's name was Bahadur Shah Zafar.
At that time, he was over 80 years old. He held virtually no real power, yet his name carried historic authority. Initially, Zafar hesitated, but circumstances were changing rapidly.
Ultimately, they accepted the support of the rebels. And at that very moment, the revolt of 1857 began to transform from a localized military mutiny into a major political movement. Now, the rebels had a symbol, a name around which thousands could rally. But the real story begins here, because after Delhi, the rebellion started spreading across all of North India.
Kanpur, Lucknow, Jhansi, Bareilly, Allahabad, Agra. The most crucial phase of the revolution of 1857 had now begun.
Let us begin with Kanpur. Nana Sahib was leading the movement there. Nana Sahib had a long-standing dispute with the British.
He was the adopted son of Peshwa Bajirao II. However, the British had stopped his pension. Nana Sahib considered this an injustice. When the rebellion broke out, Kanpur became a major center of conflict between the British and the rebels. The fighting continued for several weeks. Eventually, the British position began to weaken.
However, the events in Kanpur later became highly controversial, because acts of violence were committed by both sides, and British propaganda made extensive use of them. Meanwhile, the struggle had intensified in Lucknow as well. Awadh had already been annexed by the British, consequently discontent there ran deep.
Begum Hazrat Mahal took up the fight against the British. She mobilized the local people and battled the British army for a long time. But if there was one truly inspiring face of the revolution of 1857, it was Rani Lakshmibai of Jhansi. Jhansi had already been annexed by the British under the doctrine of lapse. Rani Lakshmibai never accepted this.
When the rebellion spread, she took the responsibility of defending Jhansi into her own hands. She organized an army, fortified the fort, and began preparations to confront the British.
In 1858, British forces advanced towards Jhansi. The battle began, and then that scene unfolded which became a part of Indian history.
Rani Lakshmibai entered the battlefield on horseback. She displayed extraordinary courage. This was not merely a queen's war, it had become a fight for honor, rights, and freedom.
However, the British army was stronger in terms of numbers and resources. Jhansi eventually fell under British control. Yet, Rani Lakshmibai did not give up.
She joined forces with Tatya Tope and continued the struggle. In the battle fought near Gwalior in 1858, Rani Lakshmibai attained martyrdom.
But her story did not end there, for she became a symbol of courage and resistance for future generations.
Meanwhile, Tatya Tope continued guerrilla warfare for a long time.
He was betrayed by his friend Man Singh, the Raja of Narwar, after which the British hanged him in Shivpuri, Madhya Pradesh on April 18, 1859.
But the story of the 1857 revolution was not limited to just Delhi, Kanpur and Jhansi. In eastern India too, a warrior stood against the British, a man who was around 80 years old at the time.
And the name of that warrior was Veer Kunwar Singh. Kunwar Singh was the ruler of the Jagdishpur estate in the Shahabad district of Bihar.
When the revolution of 1857 began, most people thought that no one could lead a war at such an advanced age. But history was set to write a different story.
In July 1857, mutinous soldiers from the Danapur cantonment reached Jagdishpur, and Kunwar Singh accepted the leadership of the rebellion against the British.
The year was 1858. Kunwar Singh was crossing the Ganges River with his army. Just then, the British attacked him. A bullet struck his arm.
The wound was so severe that there was a risk of infection spreading. It is said that he severed his own injured wrist and offered it to the river Ganges to prevent the poison from spreading throughout his body.
It is indisputable that despite being critically wounded, he continued the struggle, and this is precisely what places him among the most extraordinary warriors of the revolution.
On April 20, Singh regained control of Jagdishpur.
But due to constant warfare and injuries, his health began to deteriorate rapidly. On April 26, 1858, this great warrior passed away. The British launched a counter-offensive just as rapidly as the revolt of 1857 had spread. Additional troops were summoned from Britain.
A large number of troops were also sent from Punjab and some other regions. The British began attacking the rebel strongholds one by one.
The British assembled a massive army to recapture Delhi. The final assault on Delhi was launched in September 1857. After several days of fierce fighting, Delhi came under British control.
The last Mughal emperor, Bahadur Shah Zafar, was arrested. He was exiled to Rangoon, where he spent his final days.
After Delhi, the British launched fierce attacks on Kanpur, Lucknow and Jhansi as well. The rebels fought bravely, but the military might of the British was over momentum. Gradually,
The revolution of 1857 had lost its momentum, but its impact had not vanished. The British suppressed the rebellion, but they had realized that India was no longer the same as before. After the revolt, British rule tightened its control over India. The East India Company was dissolved, and India came directly under the British government. Queen Victoria announced that India was now part of the British Empire.
But the revolution of 1857 ignited a spark that could not be extinguished. This uprising made Indians realize for the first time that the British could be challenged.
the revolution laid the foundation of nationalism in India. In the decades that followed, this very sentiment evolved into the freedom movement. The revolution was not a failure. It showed India the path to unity. This was the moment when India collectively challenged British rule for the first time. And that is why this revolution is called India's first war of independence. This is not just history, it is our identity. In your opinion, is it correct to call the revolution of 1857 India's first war of independence? Or was it primarily a military mutiny? Do share your views in the comments below.